So the first thing that we're going to do is look at the tool that we recommend you use to write your C++ code. This tool is called an IDE. So what is an IDE? IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. All of the code that you write is written in a programming language, kind of like how in your English class you'd write English for your English essays. But here we're writing code in C++. So if you had to write a 10-page English essay, you could theoretically do that with pen and paper, but that would be extremely time-consuming and error-prone. So what most people tend to do is use a tool like Microsoft Word or Google Docs, which has a lot of built-in tools that make writing English easier, like autocorrect or spell check. So you can kind of think of IDEs as editors like Google Docs, but instead they're for programming. Because in IDEs, we would have similar tools like code completion, highlighting syntax errors, etc., that make writing different programming languages like C++ a lot easier. So here I have a screenshot of an IDE called Cider, which is the IDE that we use at Google. It is short for Cloud IDE, and this is actually what I use on the daily to write my code at YouTube. For this class, we're going to be using something similar. It's also a cloud-based IDE, but it is called CS50. CS50 Sandbox is the place where you'll be editing, compiling, and running your C++ code. And you're going to use the GitHub account that you connected your Fullerton EDU emails to log in and create a sandbox at the web page that I pasted here. When you create a sandbox, just make sure that you check terminal window and text editor because we want both of those panels in your sandbox, and those should be checked by default. So let's take a look at the UI of the sandbox just so you can get a little bit familiar. So on the left-hand side, you'll see a file explorer. So this is kind of just like the files on your computer, but when you're in the CS50 sandbox, this is running in what we call the cloud. And when something's running in the cloud, it means that there's a computer running somewhere else that's showing you its screen. And it stores all of the files that you edit here in the sandbox. So as long as you log into the same GitHub account, you can access these files from any computer because every time you log in, you're connecting to some other computer to access these files. So this is what we call developing code in the cloud. And this cloud-based style of development is exactly how we write code generally at Google. All right, so on the right-hand side, you see a panel. This is the text editor. This is where you're going to be typing your code. So just think of this panel as like the Google Docs for your C++ code. And on the bottom right panel, you see a window with a $sign. So what is this? This is called a terminal, also known as the command line. So you're used to interacting with your computer by using your mouse. You can mouse around, you can click somewhere, you can double click to open a file. The terminal is the way to interact with your computer, but with your keyboard. You can tell the computer what to do with commands. And the $sign that you saw earlier, that is often the symbol that's used to signify where you can begin typing in commands. So some of the commands that you can do are like create files or copy files or open files, just like you would do with your mouse. So I'm going to teach you a few commands that you'll find useful for this lab and for the class in general. So the first one we'll cover is PWD. It stands for Print Working Directory. This kind of just says, or answers the question of where am I? It will list the entire file path of the directory that you're in. ls is, it'll list out the contents of the directory or the folder that you're currently in. So if there are multiple different files in the folder that you're currently in, it'll list them all out. The next command is cd, which stands for change directory, and it accepts this parameter called folder name. So if you see these pointy brackets that I've included here, know that that means that you replace that with the actual name of the folder. So cd and then the actual folder name will change the directory that you're in to be inside that folder. Make dir is making a new directory, so you can create a new folder and then just pass in the name of the folder that you want to create. Touch is a command that is used to make a brand new file that is empty. So it's going to be named file name or whatever you pass in, and it'll be empty and ready for you to edit. And rm is a dangerous command that removes either the file that you pass in or the directory that you pass in permanently. Some tips that you'll want to know when you're navigating the terminal on CS50 and in general, you can use the up and down arrows. If you passed in a command before, you can avoid having to type that command out completely from scratch by just pressing up until you see the command that you want to redo. So it kind of lets you navigate between the history of commands that you've already executed. And a very useful one that I use all the time is tab. So say you're doing like one of these commands that accepts a folder name, you could do cd and then just type in the first few letters of that folder name and just press tab, and it'll auto-complete that folder name, and you don't have to type the entire thing. So it saves you a little bit of time.